I remember clearly how it all began. Initially, I received a series of letters from someone claiming to be the second pilot. I didn't give them much credence at first, but then they started sharing information that only the commander and I knew. Convinced by these details, I received a call from them inviting me to Norway because they had something for me. I decided to go, persuading Blanca to join, along with another couple of friends. We traveled to Norway, and in that first meeting, this man handed me a USB drive. But the story didn't end there. Sometime later, he contacted me again, asking me to return to Norway, which complicated things. My wife didn't understand why we had to go back if we had already been there, but we eventually agreed and went. During this second trip, while contemplating an impressive waterfall, I received another USB drive from him, labeled Black Ray. This information contained a series of experiences of Jesus before his public life, journeys he made around the Mediterranean and parts of Asia that are not widely known. What I discovered was a Jesus of Nazareth incognito, one who was not in his preaching life but was essentially out to meet people. The most significant difference is that this Jesus had no intention of creating a church or entrusting the creation of one. The famous phrase to Peter, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church," is false. It was interpolated into the Gospels many years after Jesus' death when the early church was growing and needed a philosophical justification for its actions. Moreover, the word church appears in Greek, and Jesus spoke Aramaic, so he could not have used that word. Because of this, I celebrate Christmas in August, as the information I've received suggests that Jesus was born at that time, which makes sense given the dry season. In the 4th century, the church decided to mark Jesus' birth on December 24th. This date was chosen to replace a widespread pagan festival called the Saturnalia, which celebrated the lengthening of days after the winter solstice around December 21st or 22nd. People considered this phenomenon as the triumph of the sun. During these celebrations, it was customary to exchange gifts, illuminate temples, and hold special dinners. Thus, the church sought to eliminate these pagan practices by replacing them with the birth of Jesus. It's fascinating to observe how history presents a Jesus who was very likely not born in winter. During those months in Bethlehem, the weather conditions were not the best, and it's improbable that shepherds would leave their flocks out. Generally, travels like those of the people of that time took place during the dry season in summer. Additionally, in my research, I found accounts of Jesus' incredible healing abilities, which drew crowds seeking miracles. On one occasion in the village of Sidon, approximately 680 people gathered asking to be healed. Jesus, from the hillside where he was staying, felt compassion, and it is said that a massive collective healing took place. Although not all of his miracles are detailed in the Gospels, these testimonies reinforce his reputation as a healer. Among the most emblematic and questioned stories is that of Jesus walking on the waters of the Sea of Tiberias. According to my research, this story could have a more earthly explanation. Peter, one of his disciples, suffered from sleepwalking. During a boat crossing, Peter fell into the water in a sleepwalking episode, believing he saw Jesus walking on the water. Although it was later understood to be a dream, Peter insisted it had been real. This account was so convincing that even Mark, who accompanied Peter, included it in his gospel. These narratives, far from diminishing Jesus' figure, show how his legacy has been shaped by the beliefs and circumstances of his time, leaving us a rich tapestry of stories and interpretations to explore and understand. I want to share something fascinating about the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. It didn't exactly occur on the third day as commonly believed, but rather a little earlier on the second day. Jesus had stated on several occasions that he had power over life, and he demonstrated it by resurrecting. The surprising part is that after his resurrection, Jesus appeared 19 times that I'm aware of, in very distant places from each other, including Alexandria in Egypt and Tyre, which is now part of Lebanon. One of the most impactful encounters took place on the beach of Zah, where over 500 witnesses saw his appearance. The Gospels barely mention this event, stating in just 2 lines that he appeared to 500 brothers, but without giving it the importance it truly has. Those who saw Jesus after his resurrection initially described him as a being with a transparent body. However, after sharing meals with them, his body became more recognizable, and they identified him mainly by his voice. There are many elements in these narratives that support the belief that Jesus truly resurrected. For example, in the Diary of Eliseo, there's an account of an episode during the Transfiguration. Jesus went up Mount Hermon with 3 of his disciples, who were part of what they called the TBA, a kind of personal escort. This was not favoritism towards Peter, John, and James, but rather a decision made by the 12 during the wedding at Cana to prevent crowds from gathering around Jesus. On that mountain, Jesus not only transfigured, radiating light from his body and face, but he was also accompanied by 2 figures that were not Elijah and Moses but other unidentified characters who witnessed his divinity. It's crucial to understand that Jesus, although born in Bethlehem and raised like any other child, did not have a supernatural conception as many believe. The story of the Virgin Mary is a first-century invention created by an ecclesiastical figure who, in my opinion, was quite confused. Therefore, Jesus in his human nature was completely human. However, in his divine nature, he is what we might consider a great extraterrestrial, as his divine origin is not of this world. He is the creator of a universe, and from that perspective, we can consider him, in a way, non-human. The Big Bang Theory, for example, could explain the creation of our local universe, like our galaxy. But Jesus belongs to a much broader and more mysterious context. The idea that there are billions of galaxies forces us to consider that the origins of the cosmos are not limited to a simple Big Bang. Although I don't doubt that a Big Bang occurred to give rise to a galaxy or a local universe, what we need to understand is that creation is infinitely larger. In one of the texts studying the life of Jesus of Nazareth, it's recounted that he tried to explain this complexity. One day he drew 7 circles in the sand with a smaller one in the center, attempting to illustrate that in the visible creation, there are 7 great super-universes. We inhabit one of these within a small galaxy, and at the center of everything is paradise, the only place that remains static. To reach it, one must traverse numerous universes, a journey much more extensive than our current science can explain. Each galaxy, according to this vision, would necessarily have its own god, but the visible creation is only a fraction of the whole, as there is also an invisible creation much vaster. The spiritual realm, or the invisible kingdom, as Jesus calls it, is humanity's ultimate destination, not the visible creation. The resurrection of Jesus was an act meant to demonstrate this truth, to show that beyond physical death, there is life, a different life but initially physical, in which we awaken from the sweet sleep of death. At first, it's a confusing place where you find yourself with a physical body that you can shape according to the best moment of your life. From there, things begin to happen. Deceased loved ones appear, and you start to understand, albeit partially, what awaits you. There's a process of logical and necessary mental reconversion because we bring a life full of problems, vices, and habits that we need to change and modify. Then you continue advancing, never dying again, until your physical body transforms into light, and you enter the realm of the spirit. But even that is not the end, because when you arrive in paradise, you begin a process that is practically inconceivable and for which there are no sufficient words to describe. Thus, the resurrection and eternal life are not merely promises but indicators of an incredibly complex and wonderful universe designed for a spiritual journey that we can barely begin to comprehend. According to the research and texts I've studied, when you reach paradise, you'll be trained and prepared to become a creator god, just like Jesus of Nazareth. We cannot change history. This is something I learned from the commander. When I presented him with the famous paradox of time travel, he assured me that it's not as we've been told. He explained that traveling to the past and changing events to alter the present is a mistaken conception. There is a higher design that prevents such changes from destructively affecting the future. This organizes reality in such a way that it's impossible to alter the future through the past, debunking the belief that time travel is impossible. Speaking of time, I want to share a very illustrative anecdote I found in the Diary of Eliseo. On one occasion, someone asked Jesus about the future while they were walking through Israel. Jesus, to demonstrate a point, led 100 to 200 people to the bank of a river. They all sat down and waited for 3 hours, looking across to the other side with Jesus at the forefront. At the end of that time, Jesus stood up and told them, "As you see, the future does not arrive," and he insisted they forget the future and live in the present. Moreover, Jesus struggled greatly to convince his family and people that he was not the Messiah the Jews were expecting. The Messiah for many, especially the Orthodox, was seen as a political liberator, a warrior who would lead the Jewish armies to glory. Mary, his mother, had several confrontations with him on this topic because she, influenced by the interpretation of the angel's appearance announcing Jesus' birth, believed he was that Messiah. Jesus, however, insisted that this was not his role. The Gospels do not recount another significant confrontation that lasted until the end of his life. During one of the most tense moments when Jesus was being pursued by Levites and temple police who wanted to capture him, he bid farewell to some of his followers. At those critical moments, Mary and two of his brothers arrived at the house of the CDO to speak with him, but the crowd was so great they couldn't enter. The tension and misunderstandings in those critical moments are part of a much more complex and human narrative than many believe. There was a moment in Jesus' life when the evidence of a rift between him and his family, who saw him as the political liberator Messiah, became clear. In a particular encounter when he was informed that his mother and brothers were outside waiting for him, Jesus asked, "But who is my mother and who are my brothers?" Upon hearing Jesus' response, Mary fainted, a story that the Gospels do not relate. This distancing was not simply a confrontation but a gradual estrangement where Jesus, tired of being misunderstood, let them call him as they wished. For a long time, I pondered these distortions of history, how people are being misled and how religious institutions have become businesses. This led me to the bishopric of CDIS, where I made one of the most transcendental decisions of my life, to leave those circles. The concept of hell as we imagine it does not exist. What truly awaits you after death is indescribably fascinating. Imagine not needing a digestive, circulatory, or reproductive system, a purified existence. And if you think that's extraordinary, consider my 47 years of research into the UFO phenomenon. Over these years, I've compiled information on approximately 1,000 different types of beings piloting these crafts. Although this is just a fraction of what really exists, in the two world wars, which together resulted in nearly 100 million deaths, no non-human civilization intervened to stop the catastrophe. This suggests that each civilization has its destiny and should not be interfered with, even if it appears disastrous. Throughout history, non-human beings have intervened discreetly. Consider Moses on Mount Sinai, enveloped in dense fog with noises resembling earthquakes. Are we really describing an omnipotent God who needs fog and earthquakes? What is described could be the descent of a large non-human vessel. These beings were with Moses for 40 days, imparting not only the 10 Commandments but also a complete body of laws that would form the basis of culture and religion. Regarding the future, let me tell you, it does not exist as such. It is a concept sold by dominant cultures to promote consumerism. The future will never arrive because it is always now. What matters is the present. I will continue researching, writing, and trying to unravel more truths to share with the world, living fully in the present and exploring these mysteries as ancient as they are fascinating. After sharing this journey with you, I want you to take away a key idea. Jesus Christ, the character we have studied and venerated, is much more than a religious or historical figure. He is a symbol of the search, an explorer of humanity and its depths. Today, we have discovered together that the story of Jesus of Nazareth that we know might not be the whole truth. I have traveled, researched, and above all, learned that behind every document, behind every story, there is an untold history waiting for us. Jesus, before becoming the preacher everyone knows, was a traveler, a man seeking to understand beyond established borders, beyond the religious and cultural norms of his time. This Jesus we find in the shadows of history did not seek to found a church but to connect with people, to learn, and to teach through pure human contact. Remember, words can be manipulated, but the spirit of inquiry and understanding is eternal. It is vital that we do not accept history as it is presented to us but seek to know the essence behind the words. So I invite you, I urge you not to stop exploring, questioning, and learning. Continue watching these videos, continue delving into these teachings, not only to transform your life but to expand your understanding of the world. Do not settle for what they tell you is the truth. Seek your own truth because in that search, we come a little closer to what it really means to be free. Let us celebrate together, not only in August but every day, the possibility of discovering and rediscovering Jesus and with him the depth of our own humanity. Remember, each video, Each teaching we share is a step forward in our collective journey towards understanding. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Don't forget to practice what you've learned and continue exploring with me. Your life is about to transform, and together we will continue to unveil the mysteries of our existence. Until next time, remember that the future is a blank canvas, and the brush is in your hands.